Okay, good afternoon all, and welcome to the webinar on an introduction to React.js. I would like to welcome Mr. Abhishek Kumar Pandit on behalf of Parul University and Computer Science and Engineering Department, Parul Institute of Engineering and Technology. Mr. Abhishek Kumar Pandit is graduated his bachelor in engineering from in computer science and engineering, and at present he is working as a junior software developer at Civica India Private Limited. He is having more than a year of experience in a full stack developer. He's also worked on .NET Core, SQL, and MongoDB. He also having certification in React, machine learning, data visualization. He has created many projects in machine learning and developed many models and deployed, and also like to provide counseling and lead the team of development at Mentor City. So now I would like to hand over this session, webinar session, to Mr. Abhishek to share his thoughts on the topic. Yes, Mr. Abhishek.
Yeah. So thank you, Amit sir, and thanks to the Parul University again, so that they have welcomed me back for a webinar session, so that I can showcase my skills and I can help the students to guide them on a React.js developer. That's all. So first of all, whenever we come to an webinar, the first point is that what's the motive of that webinar, and why we go and see that webinar, or why we should join that webinar. So uh, the main fact is that before going to a webinar, just have a I like to prefer that just have a look at that what's the introduction, what's the feature, and what's the topic of that webinar. So as we are having that an introduction to React.js, so I would like to continue on. I would like to start that webinar on that introduction to React.js. So yeah, we can go ahead. So on today webinar, I'm going to discuss on some topics like what is React, why we should use React, and we will see how we can set up our React.js in our own machine, and we will have some look on the JSX, what is JSX, and how the components and component lifecycle works on the React, and how the component interact with each other. And there will be a quick demo of 10 to 5 minutes, 15 minutes, so that we can have a two demo for that. So basically, what is React? Okay. So yeah, React basically I can say that it's a library for building the UI, which has been developed by Facebook in 2021, and it is the V of MVC. We can in our common day-to-day life in development, we used to use that word model view and controller. So the React belongs to view part. Unlike an Angular, it is more a library, not a framework, because there is a myth that it's also a framework. But yeah, not it's not a framework. It's more about a library, and hence it requires the uses of additional libraries for state management and routing interaction with an API. So these are the basics of React.js, and more as the day by day there are more React.js developers are going to be in higher, because it's currently in the boom, as we can see that if we can go and see the trend of that React.js. Okay, introduction. So again, React is a component based architecture, as I already discussed that why you should be using the React, what is React component. So yeah, component is nothing, just a piece of UI. Suppose that when we are creating an application, we have so many components like navbar, there is a sidebar, there are some content on that particular page, there is some footer on that page, there is some charts list, and list of item can be available in a particular app or in a particular page. So whatever we uh, bind that, whenever we bind each and every different component in an UI, in a single page application. That's why it is called as an SPA, single page application. That's why React is called as an SPA. So when we have to when we have to uh, it is more specific to the reusable component. Suppose that I have to create a navbar, and that same navbar should be present in multiple screens. So we don't rather, instead of creating that same navbar into 2 to 3 times and writing same code multiple times, we just create a component of that navbar, and we use that navbar component in anywhere of the screen, wherever we in anywhere of the component whenever it is required for us. So React is a collection of such independent and reusable components. And even though each and every React app should have one parent component, which is responsible for calling the whole different components. Suppose that in that right hand side picture, you can we all can see that there are navbar, sidebar, content, footer, and from content there is some charts list. So these all are different component uh, which has been binded into a single component called app. So we bind that all different component in a together one component, and every component is the application in the application is nested in the root component. So we can see that the nesting from app to component and then chart, or either list or list of item, and output of every component is a React element that is called JSX or JS, which we can see in the demo. And React is more about the virtual DOM. So whenever we create a application in React, so whatever the code we run, it's run on the virtual DOM. It's not run on the Chrome DOM, web application DOM. Suppose that we are have most what we are using Chrome for the develop for just visualizing the for visualizing the SPA. So it is not updating the actual Chrome DOM. It is just updating his own DOM, and that DOM reflects the component into the actual DOM. So just because of that virtual DOM, it is lightweight. So whatever we update, whatever we do, whenever we create any kind of component, we create that component and render that component into the virtual DOM, and that virtual DOM is responsible for demoing for rendering that component in the actual DOM in our Chrome or in any of the browser. So this is one of the also key reason that's for using the React, and the why it is called as lightweight application, which we'll see in the upcoming slides. And whenever we change some state, suppose that we, in the left hand side we can see that I have changed a content in that content component. So if whenever I change a content component, so it will not update the whole DOM at that time. It will just update that content UI component. So just because of that, so it just because of that we can save this time also. It's not taking so much of time, because if we'll go and update the whole component from app, then component, then list of item, so it will take some lots of time. So so that's the reason that React keep updating its own virtual DOM, and it changes its state in its own virtual DOM, and that virtual DOM is always been in sync with the real DOM of our browser, whatever the browser kind of browser we are using. So yeah, so again, when we comes to that a point, why should we use React? So if we can see simplicity, simplicity basically means that what it is easy, it should be easy, and it should be easily understandable to anyone who is not a back. If suppose that some other person who is looking at your code, or anyone of our code, so it will be well defined so that we can simply understand that what that particular code wants to deliver whenever we look into that code. So as we can see that the definition is also on that. So the component based approach, well defined life cycle, and use of just plain JavaScript, and simply to build professional web, mobile application and support it. And it is easy to learn sorry for that. Yeah, so it is also easy to learn because it's just required basic knowledge of JavaScript, CSS, HTML, and if you are having a knowledge of jQuery, then it's quite good. Then you can move on to the advanced JavaScript, and it also support native approach. So just because of that native approach, we can create a cross development, we can create a cross mobile application also. So if we are writing that code in React Web, so we can easily convert that code into the iOS development or the Android development also, and if we can use that code for the reusability. No, we don't have to create for iOS and Android a different whole application. We can use that a particular React app into iOS, Android, and web also. And it's provide one-way data binding. So React mostly uses one-way data binding. It means that whenever we bind some data, so it goes from parent to child. It doesn't goes from vice versa, like whenever we try to update some parent component from the child one, so it's not supportable while we are using the React only. And it is easier to debug also because there are there are different component which we are binding into one app. So if some component is not displaying or not rendering at that time, so we can just have a look on that component, and we can rectify the errors easily. And performance impact, yeah. So it's it provide faster delivery just because, as I already said, that whenever we render a component or whenever we create any component, that component render into the React virtual DOM, and that virtual DOM is responsible for updating the real DOM, which is our Chrome browser or of Edge browser or Internet Explorer, any kind of browser we are using. So that's the reason, that's why it is faster and it deliver better UX or UI. And testability is also super easy because we can say we can test our component differently. So as I said that if we are displaying the whole app and some component like my neighbor is not displaying in that component, in that application, so instead of looking the whole bunch of code of that but parent component, I can directly go and test my only navbar component, that if there is any issue or is there any state issue, so that I can easily look into that and output of that, and I can easily trigger the actions of that, so that the test will be easy and easy to debug also. And React is a high powered tool, especially when we use in the conjunction with a Flux. So as I said that React is one-way data binding. So while we are using the Flux, Flux pattern library like Redux or Akita, okay, so it provides us two-way data binding. So just because of two-way data binding, just because of that third-party flexibility we can use, so it's become high-powered tool. And if your project involves many components with different, often changing state, so we can also easily manage our state using the state management of React with use state, or with the Redux or the use observable from which is provided by Akita also. So we can use this kind of thing, even though we can use context API for managing our state and managing our API states. So we can see that currently React is used by Facebook. So obviously it is when developed by Facebook, so it is using that. Uber, Netflix is also migrating his whole bunch of code to the React development. Twitter is also using that. PayPal, Reddit, Walmart, and I can have some. Uh, I can give you some more example of that company. There is a company in Gurgaon which also migrating his whole bunch of code from PHP to React. If I That company name is 1K Kirana Bazaar. It is situated in Gurgaon. So if you look into that, so that company is also migrating his whole bunch of code from PHP to the React. Even though there is a company called Digital Investo or Mentor City, So they are also more focused on the React native approach because they are developing the cross web application so that it will be easy available to mobile and to web also. So these are the companies in India also. So they are also using the React as much as possible. And setup. So yeah, the before setup the installation before installing the create application for React, there are some prerequisites. So we must have a node.js file, node.js file in our local machine. We must have a editor. It should be VS Code, Atom, or anything else. And after having these two prerequisites, we can install our we can have our application up and running by just creating that application. So line number 3, we can see that the command is that npm install hyphen g. G stands for global. So when we install npm install g create react app, so after that it will be installed globally. So we don't need to write that npm install create react app again and again. Just we have to write that create react app and our app name, and that will be, and it will set up our development server, webpacks, babel, sample javascript code, and etc. And we just have to in line number 5 we can go see that we just have to change our directory from our root component to the child folder, whatever the name you are giving. So and after that we can start with the npm start module. Okay, so JSX, so it's nothing, it's just a JavaScript plus XML code. So it is a syntax extension to JavaScript. It is used to describe what the UI should like look like. Okay, so in the left hand side the JSX component is there, JSX code is there, and in the right hand side there is a code for JavaScript. So both of the codes are same, just there is a different in that pattern. So while we go into JSX, so we use the component based architecture, and while we go into the JavaScript we use functional based architecture. So as we can see in the left hand side in the JSX code, I'm just writing a code for simple const element, and that element will have a header of greetings class hello world. Okay. And that will display a normal hello world. And while we go into that React JavaScript code, so we need to write some convention based architecture. So React is the parent component, and dot create element is the child component of that React application, a React component. So whenever we write some code in JavaScript, so we have to use that kind of pattern. So it is just the nested pattern. And and in JSX we just bind that nested into one one itself, one tag. So yeah, React component. So component, as I already said, that component let you split the UI into dependent and reusable piece. So we can think about each piece is a isolation. Each of the component is not dependent on any other component. Each component is independent and isolated till itself. So conceptually, components accept arbitrary inputs or props and return React element describing what should appear on the screen. So in the bottom we can see there is a image in which there are book component, book 1, book 2, and book 3. So there are three components for a there are I have displayed three different book component name called book 1, book 2, and book 3, and that whole different component relates to a single component that named book component. And there is a button component which also there are two buttons for result field and cancel, and both of these buttons belongs to that button component. and that book list. So what, when we're displaying that list, book 1, book 2, and book 3, so that book list component is managed by sorry, that book 1, book 2, and book 3 whole component is managed by book list component. And that there is a, in that right hand side we can see there is a checkout component. That checkout component is handled by the checkout component. So no component is independent on any of the component, as we can see in the image itself. So if we want to test our code, so we can, if suppose that book 1 is not rendering correctly, so I can go ahead and check that book component only, why that component is not rendering perfectly. So I don't have to go and check the whole code, like checkout, for checkout component, for the button component, for the book list component. I just have to go and check that whether book component is working fine. If that book component is working fine, so I can go ahead and check that book list component. So I can, most probably it will be easy to debug and test our code, because there are different component, different UIs. So yeah, here is a sample of the previous one. So in in that component, so, as I already displayed, so there is a book list component, book 1, book 2, and book 3. So if I go ahead and render you, there is a method called book list extend component. So that component is nothing that book component. And while we are rendering, what we are rendering, so state is, so we are defining a state. State means that at the rendering time what that default state is. So while, whenever we write that state, book name is book 1, so while you can see that book component has been called with name, and I am just passing that state dot book name. So what this will happen me, what this will provide me, that whenever I call that book component and pass that name as a property, so that property will get bind to that book component, and that book component will display that name with a book 1. And in the right hand side we can see it is more about the JSX syntax. So it is also defining the same thing. So we can extend the component of book, and we can render that component this dot props dot name. So as I said, that it's a kind of property, so we can directly define that property also whenever we require that property. So we can see that state, what is state? So state object that contains the data that we want to display when the component is rendered. So whenever a component render, so it by default there is a state, whether it's a blank, default is, most probably default state is the blank state, or if we pass that some of the props, so that prop will be the state default one. So that default prop, default so that prop will be the default state for that component when it's rendering into the UI. So in that particular slide we'll more talk about the props. So every React component has a property called props. So props is the short name of property, and this is basically a plain JavaScript object. So in JavaScript, each and each and every item or each and every variable is an object itself. And props are passed to the component via attribute, as I already said, that whenever we are in that example we can see, so while we are calling that book component, we passed a attribute name, that's name, and that name value is book 1. So here name is accessed by a props in the book component, and props are immutable. So while we say that props are immutable, so we can't change the value at that default state. We can change the value while we are using that on change event or some other events. So we can change at that time. So props are only the way to input the data. So props is the property is the only way while we are inputting some data into some other component. So it is the only way to pass that value from one component to a different component, so that it will be accessible to that particular component. So state is the private data of a component. So while suppose that I have two to three component, book component, book list and button component. So each and every component is having its own state. We can't use that particular state to each and every component. We can't use a single state to each and every component. Each and every component should have its own private state, and whenever state change, so component again goes into re-rendering. So whenever we change that state, so virtual DOM got updated, and that DOM update the real DOM or the actual DOM of the your browser. And there are three things to be taken care with this state. So we need three things to be whenever we are using this state, we must have to keep 3 points in our mind. For example, don't modify state directly. So we can see that there is example, this will re-render, not re-render a component whenever we are updating that. So this dot say dot component, while in that particular line I am directly passing that hello to a comment, but that will not work because we are, it is not the state we are setting, it is the state which is default. So instead of using this kind of stuff, we go and use that use state functionality, and we are using that more often in our React development, for setting of the default state to different state whenever we change that state value. So we can see that this dot set state. So set state is nothing; it's a variable, and that variable is setting that comment value to hello in this set state and the state itself. So whenever suppose that by default the state value is null or empty string, so in that particular line I am setting that state value to hello. And we, and state updates may be asynchronous, hence use. And the second point is that state updates may be asynchronous, hence use method to update the state. So whenever we are updating any state, we must pass that props and the state default value, so can, so that we can go ahead and create update this state asynchronously. Whenever a state change, there is a that your component must have to re-render and re-render into virtual DOM, and that virtual DOM must have to re-render the component in that the real DOM. So states are up and merged. So in that state, in that three first line, we can see that the state value is post and comment, and both are of empty array. So what I'm doing over here in the second line, I'm just setting that state. So whatever the response I'm getting from the response dot post, I'm setting that response into the post array. And for this third line for the comment, or I'm also doing that same kind of thing, response dot comment. So in this way that state will get synchronous asynchronously update, and that state will synchronously get re-rendered and to a virtual DOM, and that virtual DOM is going to handle that handle our re-rendering of that real DOM. So functional component. So we can create two kind of component in our React. So there is a functional component and there is a component itself. So while we are JSX component, so while we are calling a functional component, so that functional component should must have a naming convention. The naming convention should be function, and that function name, and then property props, whatever we are going to pass in that function, and that function will return the JSX element. So whenever I call that hello, so the props dot name will be hello, example will be displayed into the UI, and this function is valid. This function is a valid React component because it accepts a single property, and we call such component function component because they are literally JavaScript functions. So we can see that, as I said, that So JavaScript is more, it's more on the JavaScript plus XML. So it's a basic function definition structure, how we define our function in JavaScript. Function does not have any state, hence it is stateless. So function for by default function don't have any kind of state default, so it is stateless until unless we define some state to that function. And it is the class based component. So as we are using as of now, as currently we are using ES6 more as compared to the ES3 or ECMAScript. So in ES6 or ES7 we are more preferring the class based component instead of function based component, because in class based component we can define our own state and we can define our own life cycle. It's So in class based component we can define our own state which is owned by the class component, and class component is more on the life cycle. So it's a stateful component instead of, that's the reason why the more nowadays we are going for the more class based component instead of function based component, because whenever nowadays whenever we develop something, we need something to be default state, so that we can, if nothing is there, so at least we can display some default values to the to the DOM, and that DOM will render that particular default values to the client or any user. So now it comes to the component lifecycle. So each and every framework or library, or I can say any coding standard, any coding kind of standard, so they are having their own different life cycle. So in React we are having three stages of life cycle: mounting, updating, and unmounting. So while whenever we call a new props, whenever a new prop or new state is called, so at that time we are into the mounting phase. So it means that that prop or that state is been constructed and it is in the render phase. So we can see, so whenever we are mounting that, so it get constructed, and after that construction, so new props is going to set, new state is going to set, and we are updating the rendering component. Because of why? Because of we have updated, we have set state, and we have set our props to that render component. And after that, whenever that render component completes its life cycle, that render component comes to the React update DOM reference. So React update DOM reference is nothing, just it's a virtual DOM, and that virtual DOM is responsible for whether for whether that component has been mounted or not. If that component has been mounted, so it will update that component by calling component did update. And if the component is been not mounted, so it will call that component did mount, and after that it will call a function component did update. And after just the bunch, after that whole bunch of life cycle, mounting and updating, whenever we are closing or whenever we are leaving that particular component, so that component will get unmount, and that component will unmount from, and that React will call a function named component will unmount. And this function is responsible for unmounting the component from React whenever we are deleting that component or deleting that state, or up, forcefully updating or forcefully deleting that uh, update state or prop. So that particular function is being called by React. And we are and in the left hand side we can also see that there is a note in render phase pure has no side effects. So it means that while whenever we are updating or whatever we are doing in our back stuff, that will not affect our current UI until unless we are going to save that code. Whenever we save that code that code will get automatically update and that virtual DOM. So component life cycle. So in that we can see there I can we can see the basic definition of that, what does constructor do, what does component did mount do, what does component did update do, and that what does component will unmount do. So the constructor, so it is just basically phase.
Hello. Hello. Yes, Abhishek. Hello. Hello. Hello.
Data from remote endpoint. So this is good place.
Hello. Hello. We have some problem with the connectivity. Okay.
Yeah,
So
so did I or
yeah,
that?
Abhishek. Yeah, Abhishek, you disconnected because might be a connectivity problem.
Yeah. I've just joined that. Sorry for that.
Yeah.
I just did I miss something?
Okay. Okay. No, no, you just disconnected. Okay, so that is no
Okay,
problem.
okay, okay. So sorry for that network issue. Yeah. So we are on that component date amount. So as I said that whenever a variable or a local state is assigned to an object, so after just that constructor component did mount is get called, and component did update is also called after that component did mount is called. So it is invoked immediately after updating occurs. So this method is not called for initial rendering. It will be only calling whenever we are updating the component from the virtual DOM to a real DOM, and component will unmount. So it is invoked immediately before a component is unmounted or destroyed. So as I said that we want some component to be destroyed. So it is called immediately before that component is unmounted or destroyed. Perform unnecessary cleanup in this method, and such as invalidating timers, canceling networks requests. So this particular thing is also necessary while we are generating the React application, because that particular function is responsible for canceling the requests also, which is not of our use, because there might be a chance that which we have display we have exported two to three component in a single component, a bunch of component in a one component, and that component is having some network request, and that component is no longer needed for me. So whenever as soon as I remove that component, so that component will unmount, and that whatever the stuff in that component, whether it's a network request or whatever the kind of thing, so that thing will be unmounted and that thing will be destroyed. So how that component interaction follows. So React follows, as I already said, that React follows one way data flow. It means that data is always handled by the parent to child, not vice versa over here. So parent component passes data to child component via props, and these props cannot be changed via child component directly. So if they want to change that props, so they have to use that state. We can see that there is a line number 3, state of parent component can be passed to a as a props to child component, and the component that owns a piece of state should be the one modifying it. So hence parent component has the handler to manipulate its state. If child component wants to modify the data, this data parent passes a reference to the handler by a props, and we should maintain only one state for a single data. This is called single source of truth, and this can be done by avoiding the local state for the data which is already present in the parent component. So as I said already said that for each and every component we try to have some each and every component we try to create some different state, so that state will not override some uh, other state value. So now we comes to a very interesting point: React versus AngularJS. So it's a pretty big, not a big difference. Both React and Angular, they both are having their own own prop on own props and own cons. So React is more about JavaScript, as I already said that it's based on the JavaScript more and XML. And in the right hand side, Angular uses enhanced HTML. So while we are comparing, so React is more on the JavaScript and the Angular is more on the HTML part. And the basic main difference comes to in line number two. React is a library, hence more flexible. Hence more flexible means that we can easily interact with the third party libraries. Suppose that if in my React application I want a third party library to be get installed, so I can easily go and install that library in my React. But if I want to achieve that particular thing in the Angular, so it is quite complex because Angular is a complete framework. So it's more strict to its own component, it's more strict to its own library. It doesn't allow more often to use some other third party libraries. And React is only the v of MVC, as I already discussed that. And Angular follows MVV pattern. So MVV pattern is nothing, just it's a model view pattern. And as there are some updates and enhancement in the Angular 5, so now it is also following the model view controller pattern, including the MVVM. And React has a virtual DOM and is faster in updating the views as compared to Angular, because Angular directly deals with actual DOM, our actual browser DOM. So hence, whenever we have to render some of the component in Angular, so that Angular will go in a uh, in a tree structure. First, it will update the app, then the other component name called book, and then the other component, and then the other component, and so on. And React is more about only components, but in Angular we can use the injectable components, pipes, and modules. So and Angular also provide two-way data binding. So and React provide one-way data binding. But yeah, in React we can also achieve the two-way data binding. But yeah, we have to use that third-party library, either Akita or Redux, because React is more about the Flux, which is more dependent on which is more dependent on Flux, and Flux is more about the one-way data binding. Okay, so now it's the time for a demo. So we'll go ahead and have a look on a quick demo, and after that we'll have a quick Q&A session, so that if someone is having any question or any query, so they can go ahead and ask that, and I would like to answer them their question. So I have created a basic two application for our demo. First of all, we'll go and set up. I will show you that how we can set up our. So I have installed Node. If I wrote Node, so I will hit enter, and it will help me that welcome to Node.js version 14.5. So I have that Node installed in my local machine. Uh, let me again refresh. I don't know. It's happened sometime. Yeah. Okay, and I will write that code. So create React app, and the name the React follows certain naming convention. If you'll provide that in some kind of this, so it will not accept that. Even though it will not accept this kind of pattern also, it only accepts the name, application name in the smaller case. So it's while creating application, so we must have to keep that in mind, that whenever we're creating an application, whenever we're providing an app name on application, we must use the lower case. So if I want to create an React app for React, suppose demo app, and when I will hit enter, so it will start installing my packages. And after that, I will get a message from the uh, React in CLI, that you can start your code by just using that cd, whatever the app name we have given. So suppose that I've created a app name called webinar demo, and just I have to redirect to that path. And after that redirecting to the path, I have to just hit npm start, and that will start my server. And it will be handling default by the node. So yeah, we can see that the starting the server has been started, and starting the development server has been called. So yeah, it's up and now running on our local network and localhost, and the network should be this. So yeah, this is the whenever we install, whenever any of us create a React application. So this is the basic application which has been provided by the React. This is the basic UI which has been provided by the React. And when we click on that React, so we will get the official documentation page. We'll redirect to the official documentation page of that React. So yeah, and when we want to close that application, so we just have to write Control and C, and we just have to press Control C and terminate batch job. Yeah, so we are done. So that's it. And yeah, so we I have created two basic applications for demo, so we can go ahead and have a look on that. So in that particular application, I have used Flux for the one-way data binding and React for the UI part. So we can see that the JSON service is also up and running, and the React part is also up and running. It will take some time, I know. Yeah, it's up and running. So we can see that I will like to go back, and I would like to so that I have bounded all a whole of bunch of this code into a single component. So whenever we go to any of the component, it we can see that the URL is not getting refreshed. We are just hitting that URL, and we are getting redirect to that URL just without having any refresh. So we can see that it's a quite fast as compared to the other SPS, other single page application uh, library or framework. Okay, so yeah, over here we can see that I have created a functional component named app, and in that particular functional component, I have created, I have just called whole bunch of component into a single one. So if suppose that my home component is not rendering, or I when I go just for a case, if my home component is not rendering when I click on that home component, so I don't have to go for the testing of whole the component. I just have to go and test that home component, that why is there any error or is there any issue, that why that's it's not working. And whenever we click on any of the component, suppose that I click on home again, so we can see that there is a URL generating that it's a gate call. So Okay, and when I try to hit add that component, suppose that I have added a component called taste. We are adding some values, and that I have a value for it has okay housey, and category is like let's say one or any test. Yeah, it will be quite good. So when I click on save, so that course has been saved. We can see the flexibility and the fastest, it's a quite bit fast in saving the data. And in the backend we can also see there is a post API calling, and that 200 response has been shared and get so it means that 201 response is means that the whatever the data I have passed, it's been saved into my DB, and that again course has been called, and it's just called because I have re-rendered that. I have updated that course page. So if I want to update that course, suppose that I like to test demo, and category is also called test demo, and I am Scott Allen, and I am just again saving. So course saved, and when I click go and check out in the backend server, so it's more about the and put and it is saying that the course has been successfully saved with a 200 status code. Okay, and for authentication on authorization, if we go ahead and we can have a look in the component, so we can see how we can validate our authorization from the React. So on a on click of submit, so if this bunch of code will go into that particular controller named React test. Yeah. So we can see that there is a model called React test, and which we have four properties. First property is ID, name, location, and there is a Fusion property which is of Fusion type, and it's of enum data type. It's a kind of more about the enum data type. So when I go and see, so there is a two field called view data and add data. So when I click on view data, so I will be going and rendering that view, and whenever we Arey, did I lost that connection again? Hello.
No, you are audible.
Okay, okay. Yeah, I thought that
Hello?
I lost.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, okay. Okay. I thought that I lost my connection again. Okay, fine. So okay, and when we click on that home button again, from here again we can go to that add. So there will be a column called add, and we can pass some of the enum value. Suppose that again I am passing that enum value, taste and test. When I click on that submit, so I will be redirecting more to that component, and you can see that it's passed in a slug field, like we can say in the query pattern. So data is like fusion type equal to one, location is test, and name is demo. So this is the whole UI, and even though we can see that the component has been re-rendered, and we can see the component is get updated with a new value fusion type which we have created right away. And if we go ahead and delete that, so it will be getting deleted, it will get deleted, and it will again re-rendered, and we can see that how fast it is again. So it's not taking that refresh time at all. We can just within a second it's getting refreshed, and in within just a few seconds it's getting the we are getting that the render output. Okay, and I have also created a component for a logout. So I would like to have a how we can use our local storage, so that uh, okay, yeah. So as we can see here, when we browse our local storage, so we can see, yeah, hello.
Yes, yes, Mr. Abhishek, we only have 10 minutes, so please
Yeah,
conclude
yeah,
this part.
yeah. Just give me a 1 to 2 minute. I'm just closing that part.
Okay.
Yeah. So whenever I when I hit okay, we can see that it's been kind of responsive UI. So this is the one thing which I would like to show you. So we don't have to think about the responsiveness. It's already handled by the React. And when I enter on the, when I fill that form for the login, so at that time we have saved that token, and whatever the thing we are doing, so we are just routing that parts on that basis of that token. So if I will erase that token, so whenever I try to hit something from the ad, or so we can see over here, so there is a message we are getting that we can't generate that kind of thing, even though we can't get that value because that token has been expired. So this is the whole bunch of thing we can do, and it's quite easy and responsive for us to have kind of stuff, create kind of this kind of stuffs, so that okay. So yeah, I would like to conclude my sentence. So this is the whole UI on this is the whole webinar on the introduction to React. So yeah, I would like so we can go ahead, Amit sir, and if someone is having any question, we can go ahead and take that questions.
Yes, the session is very wonderful, and we get most of regarding React.js.
Yeah.
Few questions that coming from the presentation you have given, that how can we benchmark that AngularJS and React.js from the developer?
Okay. Yeah.
Suppose we are a full stack developer, then how can we compare that both the approach?
Okay, so basically, what you was trying to say that how we can differentiate that which library or which for developing a UI which we should have to use, which we have to choose for either it's a React or Angular. So suppose that, sir, suppose that we are having a team which is not that much good in that TypeScript, because Angular is more on the TypeScript, Babel files. So if developers are not that much quite enough good in that Babel or TypeScript kind of thing, so we can go easily and pick that React, because it is easy to learn and we can achieve such kind of functionality what React Angular is providing in very short and very flexible way. So whenever we are and if, even though if we are having a development, if suppose that I have as a developer, if I am having a team of 4 to 5 members, and we want to create go ahead and create a basic application which will be cross platform. So cross, just because of cross platform, we can also go ahead and choose that Angular, because React sorry, not Angular, React, because React also provide the native approach for developing the cross platform application. We can migrate the web application data easily to our Android or iOS, or we can easily migrate our React native data to the web application.
Okay, thank you, thank you.
Yeah, did I
And
answer you?
one more question is
Yeah, yeah.
one more question is coming, that what are the basic that we need to learn if we want to step into the field of full stack development?
Okay. Yeah. So if suppose that if any one of us want to become a full stack developer, so the basic prerequisite is that we must have the basic knowledge of how versioning control works. Versioning control means that how Git works, basic knowledge of Git, how we can have the different branches, how we can handle that kind of stuff. And we must have at least we must have knowledge of two database, whether one from SQL, either it should be Postgre or MySQL or or MS SQL, any kind of stuff, or SQL Server, and from the NoSQL, at least we must have a MongoDB to be basic, just not in the advanced, but yeah, at least the basic concept, so that whatever kind of database we are getting in the as a full stack developer, we can easily manage that data. We can easily play with that data from our backend stuff while we are calling that services or the APIs from our backend server, from the backend services. from our backend controller. And for the backend stuff, I can say that whatever the coding platform you want to choose. Currently, if you will see, if you can see, so Node.js and .NET Core is currently in the boom, and the Nest.js is also is currently in boom, which is an advancement of Node.js. So for the backend, anyone of from anyone of that tool we can use for the backend development. And for the React, for the UI, for the front end part, just the prerequisites that the three part: CSS, HTML, and the JavaScript. This is the basic requirement to learn either Angular, either Knockout JS, either Angular JS.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Abhishek.
Yeah.
So finally, we conclude session. And thank you once again, Mr. Abhishek, for sharing such a valuable knowledge regarding React.js. And we and the students and especially the beginners who are looking for their career in the field of development. I hope they got most out of it. And your session is very informative and practical approach is very good. So we get good knowledge out of it. Thank you.
Yep. Okay. Yep. Thanks again to the Parul University and to you, sir, that you have you are having my name, and you just given me a chance so to showcase my skills in front of all of our college and all of the students who are currently in either pass out or either they are in their development learning phase. So thanks again to the Parul University and to the whole entire team of the PU webinar, your webinar, and you again, sir. Thanks a
Okay.
lot for having us.
Okay. We are expecting more sessions from your end in future like this.
Yeah, sure. Whenever our college needs us, we are there for them. Whenever you need us, we are there for them. We are, yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
viewers, we are finally this session. Uh,
Yeah.
next time we come up with